Still on the judgment delivered by the Presidential Election Petitions Court, Nigeria's main opposition, the People's Democratic Party, has also rejected the verdict in its entirety, apart from its candidate. The party has, in a statement by spokesperson Debo Ologunagba, said the judgment is, quote, against reason, against the facts and evidence presented in court, against the relevant electoral laws, guidelines and regulations, as well as the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999. The PDP also stated that, quote, indeed, the judgment is generous in technicalities and very short in delivering substantial justice in the matter. But while the PDP fumes over the decision of the court, the governing All Progressives Congress extending the olive branch to the opposition, calling on them to join hands with it to build the nation. And after Vice President Kashim Shettima boasted about retiring former Vice President and PDP presidential candidate Atiku Abubakar to rearing broilers in Fombina, the Special Assistant on Public Communications to the PDP candidate Frank Shaibu has accused Shettima of lacking the character and temperament to serve as Nigeria's Vice President. Shaibu, in reaction to Shettima's speech, said Shettima, as governor, failed abysmally in lifting his people out of poverty and failed to curb insecurity in Borno State, leading to the kidnap of over 200 Chibok schoolgirls in 2014, and as such lacked the leadership integrity to match that of former Vice President Atiku Abubakar.
Trajectory of global growth is facing Africa and Nigeria, the greatest black nation on earth, will make or mar that transition. We have had a very long day, but a very good day. My principal is extremely elated, and he asked me to convey his gratitude to our leaders and to the Nigerian people and to the Nigerian media who have been here all day long. The journey is just beginning.
I refuse to accept the judgment because I believe that it is bereft of substantial justice.
Well, to help us understand these issues in the main opposition party and its reaction since the election court verdict, we are now being joined by Umar Sani, who's a former spokesperson in the PDP Presidential Campaign Council, and he's also a former is a spokesman to former Vice President Namadi Sambo. Thank you so much, Umar, for joining us. Let's decipher some of these things that have been happening, and I actually read your article to where you issued so many things, including, like, I think about 10 points as to why you think these are the takeaways from the judgment and some of the things that you feel the judiciary ought to have done that didn't do. But let's have your own general overview of the judgment.
Well, before I go to the general overview of the judgment, Somna, it is important for me to lay the foundation. Justice Haruna Zamani, at the beginning of the tribunal, had already assured Nigerians that his tribunal will not rely on technicalities, that they will rely on substantial justice. And so Nigerians were very hopeful, and they had their trust and confidence in the judiciary, believing that substantial justice will reign. But when we came to the final judgment, what we saw was more of technicalities than substantial justice. Now, I saw so many things which are enumerated. One, I saw a judge who was reading his own judgment, who did not even understand the judgment itself. He was struggling to read the judgment. I saw in that same district a judge who threw away something that was on a credible online website, which is Amazon website. He threw it away on the basis of the fact that the person who presented the document is an interested party, when ordinarily the document is verifiable and the contents can still be verified. Then I saw a judge who went further to begin to analyze. A judge is supposed to be impartial, but a judge was analyzing to say, Obi won this, Obi won that, Obi won that. Why should he complain when that is not impartiality? That is trying to justify why you are taking a position in the matter. I believe.
Was it sounding political?
He was more political than judicial or legal. Then I saw a judge who was saying that a serious opposition. Now, this is a judge who is supposed to be impartial. He's saying a serious opposition does not need INEC. So if we don't need INEC, who do we need in the election? We don't even need the court. It is INEC that we need. If INEC had done their work very well, we don't need to go to the court. So for her to say that social media, we are using the social media to intimidate them. We are not using social media. Social media is a congregation of Nigerians. Nigerians from all walks of life, either within the country or in diaspora. And these Nigerians congregate to share ideas in order to move the nation forward. And in that, we have to examine and reassess what the justices are likely to do and what we anticipate from the justices. It is not out of the question. So if we do that and we analyze and then they come and do something which is contrary to general expectation, then we will now begin to ask ourselves, where did we get it wrong, or where did they get it wrong? These are the two areas. So we are now examining where did we get it wrong, or where did they get it wrong? And we saw that the justices, with due respect, we are not lawyers, but even the law says, in certain degree, a man who is considered to be reasonable can still give judgment in certain areas. That is why in overseas you have jury type of judgment, where reasonable people are brought to look at and examine and say, okay, this one is guilty, or this one is not guilty, or this is this, or this is not this.
All right. Let's talk about some of the foundations that you have laid here and some of the things that you also said in your article. I was very, very interested when you talked about how someone can present 2 certificates from one university and, of course, still be allowed to go scot-free. What did you exactly mean by that?
What I mean is that if you look at, there are 2 certificates that are currently subsisting. One, that the one
who? Certificates of who?
Bola Tinubu, President Bola Tinubu. 2 certificates are currently existing. One that was issued on June 27, 1979, and the one that was issued on June 22nd, 1979. 2 certificates. One was brought and submitted, and that was not the one that the school is certifying that it is from them. So now these 2 certificates are an issue of contention. We have gone to the school now, and we are in America to try to unearth what is actually the issues behind this.
Yeah, I'm bringing this up because I read that Atiku Abubakar is in the U.S. court, urging the U.S. court to quickly expedite action on that suit before it, so that he can use that to beef up his appeal to the Supreme Court. How true is that?
Well, it is important that new evidence can be introduced in law. So if we are going for an appeal and we have additional new evidence to justify our appeal, I'm sure that the Supreme Court, with a larger heart, will look at it. And so we want to go to the Supreme Court fully confident that we have sufficient and enough evidence that the Supreme Court will have no option than to say, okay, Atiku Abubakar, you are declared the winner and you are hereby returned. Go and collect your certificate of return as the president of the federal
Even
government.
after winning about 21 states and so on, because Tinubu is saying that, look, when it comes to substantial compliance to the electoral law, I won more states than any of the other political parties, and of course, I had more spread than any of the other political parties. Do you think that the Supreme Court can actually go ahead to deliver judgment to someone who didn't have 2/3 based on what INEC declared?
You see, our contention is not about what INEC declared. If we are satisfied with what INEC declared, then there will have been no need for us to go to court. We are satisfied that INEC didn't do the right thing. And so in their declaration, they made grave errors. And those grave errors are the ones that led us to the tribunal. Ordinarily, we would have loved to do the Goodluck Jonathan's option, to say, okay, winner, we congratulate you. But in Nigerian situation, when the umpire is already biased, is not impartial, then you are forced to try to go to court to seek redress. And so in that case, whether you say you are number 1 or number 2 or number 3, in our own estimation, And the reason why we have gone to court is to say you do not merit that position. That is why in our argument, and when one of the justices was arguing that the only way you can prove substantial non-compliance or overvoting is at the polling unit. And we have argued, rightly too, that that is not the only way to prove overvoting. In the case of Ekiti State, for instance.
You mentioned Ekiti.
Yes, I mentioned Ekiti. In the case of Ekiti, we are complaining that the total number of accredited voters who are to vote in Ekiti State is 300,000 on the dot. Now, Bola Tinubu scored 200,000 of that vote. Atiku scored 100,000 of that vote. Labour Party scored 11,000 of that vote, and Accord Party scored 10,000 of that vote. The number of votes that the candidates scored is higher than the number of people who were accredited to vote. So that's overvoting. And that is what we are saying. So the justices have confirmed to us that they have not really and critically examined the documents, and that they just gave judgment on the basis of their own sentiment.
Well, I just want you to take us through our electoral jurisprudence. You are someone who has served in the presidency before, and you've read through and gone through some of our previous court judgments right from 1999 when we returned back to the fourth democracy, as we like to call it, or the Fourth Republic. It looks like most times politicians don't expect justice from the Court of Appeal when it comes to presidential elections. They are always looking at the Supreme Court. But yet, we've never had any instance where the Supreme Court took any decision to favor any opposition political party since 1999.
Yes.
The only time that was close to that was in 2007 with Yar'Adua and Buhari. But of course, you and I know that it ended 4-3.
Yes. You see, the previous justices of the Supreme Court used to take certain key positions that they do not want to upstage the apple cart because they don't want to leave a country without a president. And so, because our jurisprudence was being deepened by their judgments. Now, in 2007, it was a 3-3, and then Justice Weiss casted the casting vote, and then Yar'Adua won. However, due to the pressure of the opposition, Yar'Adua was compelled to say, okay, his election was flawed, but that he would do something. And then he set up a committee headed by Justice Weiss to draw up, a concrete and judicial way forward for Nigeria, electoral way forward for Nigeria, which he did. And the opposition drummed that, on good luck, the implementation of the Weiss report, the implementation, and good luck, in good faith and in honor, decided to implement fully well,
not fully, some segment, because one of the recommendations was that the judiciary, that's the NJC, should be allowed to actually call for the appointment of the INEC chairman and then, of course, INEC secretary or INEC deputy chairman, but that one was thrown away by FEC. And of course, INEC's full independence and all of that, including that the date to set, the power to set the date for election should be removed from INEC, but of course, the FEC didn't approve that part.
Well, if you say INEC is independent, how can you now be removing certain powers from them? If you begin to remove certain powers from them, then they are not independent. But the fact of the matter is that the judiciary and INEC are two things that we always call independent, who are not independent. Because they are supposed to draw their statutory allocation directly as a first-line charge, not to rely on government. Once government is the one approving your budget, approving your request,
including appointment of recs and all of that.
Exactly. Then it becomes a problem for the Nigerian judiciary because they will not be able to dispense justice as at when due and as when required. So what we are saying generally, in essence, is that we need a quick, judicial reform. The judges, as it is now, and the justices that were there before have different orientation and different training. For instance, we didn't have to have any eyes on Justice Nikitobi. We don't have to have any eyes on Justice Kayode Esho. We don't have to have any eyes on Chukwudifo Oputa, because we know that by their conscience they will deliver what is called substantial justice, and that every Nigerian will believe that this is justice served. But again, I'm not condemning these justices. In the Supreme Court, we have eminent jurists like Justice Emmanuel Agim. I give him respect. There's Justice Joro. You know, there are quite a number of them there that when they speak law and they speak, to their
justice. Actually, they offer the same justice.
Yes. So I believe that the Supreme Court is a much more deepened in electoral jurisprudence. That when people, you can imagine, for instance, Wike in his first tenure was removed by the Election Petitions Tribunal. The Court of Appeal affirmed it, but when he went to the Supreme Court overturned it and confirmed him as the governor. Reason is being that the Supreme Court came up with a very clear theory that the smart card reader that was recently that was put in use then it was put in use then was not intended to supplant the voters register, and that the voters register remains the final place of accreditation. And so if you have less people on the smart card reader being accredited, but the voters register is saying more people have been accredited, the Supreme Court said the voter register takes precedence. And so these are some of the things that we are talking about. All
right, just before we come to a conclusion of this chat, I want you to react to the ongoing war between the former Vice President and current Vice President Shettima, saying that, look, he has retired Atiku Abubakar himself, and his principal Bola Tinubu have retired Atiku Abubakar, and they will be sending him to Fombina to go and start engaging animal husbandry. And then, of course, Atiku and his team hit him back, saying that, look, that is not statesmanly. When you're a president or vice president, your choice of words ought to be very statesmanly. What do you make of that? Having worked in the office of the vice president yourself.
I have discovered that Shettima has a very crude sense of humor, in a way. Perhaps he was trying to, bring his own type of dry jokes, to bear on the polity. But in making such type of utterances, he had to be careful. He had already initially called the former vice president an ice cream seller.
Which a lot of people didn't take lightly,
which people
despite the phone and all of that.
Even after the phone and so forth. So I think he is gradually becoming the chief comedian of Aso Rock.
Interesting indeed. And we hope to be having more of that soundbite if he chooses not to, quote, become a statesman like the PDP is telling him. Yeah. But generally, talking about Atiku Abubakar, what future lies ahead of him as we await the Supreme Court's judgment in 60 days? Some of your party members are already saying that, look, Atiku, why don't you just allow the young people to just take charge? Can you just please step down? But Atiku is saying that he's still going to court. But irrespective of whatever happens at the Supreme Court, how do you think the PDP can be reorganized as an election-winning machine like it used to be in the past?
I will leave you with these parting words from former Information Minister of Nigeria, T.O.S. Benson.
In the First Republic.
In the First Republic, where he said, and I'm not quoting, I will paraphrase, that man is a political animal, and that for people to say that he should retire because he's 83 years is an unjust statement. That as a political animal, he has the right at any age to continue to aspire to his own aspiration until such a time that the people reject him. And so Atiku has such right to continue to aspire until the people say we don't want to. But as so far as we are now, the people want him. The people who are making those calls are people who believe that he is a stumbling block to their political progress.
Well, some of them even accuse him of being the reason why the party didn't win, and that, he failed to obey the zoning rule and all of that. We had also all those sort of debates before. But the younger people in PDP who look up to the future, how can the PDP reorganize itself?
We see there is no fast, straightforward rule as to what to do in a political party. The political party works according to its dictates and what is, affecting it at that particular moment. Anybody who tells you that Atiku is the problem, it's not Atiku that is the problem. If, for instance,
including the likes of Wiki.
Yes, if Wiki
they are hitting him back, saying that look, because of your own troubles.
If Wiki had not formed the G5, the G5 would have worked for Atiku. So the party had a very strong base, but because another man's ambition is also trying to overshadow the interest and general interest of the party. So I believe that Atiku is not a problem, because we need a blend of the old breed and the new breed. The young ones cannot just come and take over. They need the wise counsel, and the tutelage of the old breed. So it is a mixture. So Atiku, we need him still within the party. We need him to provide fatherly advice. We need him to. How many of them that has the capacity, had the spread and has the national acceptance like Atiku? None.
All right. Umar Sani is a former spokesperson of the PDP Presidential Campaign Council, and then of course he was also a former spokesman in the presidential villa, having served under former Vice President Namadi Sambo. And of course, you are still his spokesman, I guess, helping out with his political engagements here and there. But most, thank you so much for gracing this studio to help us understand some of the issues, and we hope to have you more. Well, that's how it's been on this edition of This Week, where we've helped to bring you some understanding as to what's happening within the political circle. We must thank our production team here in Abuja, Lagos, and London. Do join us same time next week for another exciting edition. I'm Somna Sambo. See you next time.